I can't see. I can't see. Oh my gosh. I can see here. You know what I'll do? Oh, perfect. You know what I'll do? You know what I can see now? I'll pull this out. Okay, what do I do?
There we go. Yeah, the lights are really bright if you stand.
Yeah, I can't see.
You can't see?
No. Okay, now it's
She's right in the middle.
okay.
Now,
So nice.
I've got my magnifiers if you know.
It's just the
I
light.
can't see that at all.
I know.
We don't have a light to clip on here.
It's
Chris
not
has a
the
light.
light, it's because it's blinding, so I can't even. I think I'll be okay.
Turn these down, but he might want to.
Yeah, no, I'll manage. Okay.
I don't want you to be playing in dust.
Oh, that's okay.
Are you going to be okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you know what? I'm 60 now, so I can't see that at all. If I have enough light, then there's no problem. You
Okay.
need a fan. Somebody took your fan.
I'm okay. I'll get going. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can point the fan at you.
Okay. Good evening. It's not working. Good evening, Camrose. We're a little bit of a late start, but before we get going, just a few housekeeping issues or items. Bathrooms are located down this hallway, but because there's a lot of equipment here in the aisle, we'd ask you if you could go through where it says open over there and then come around the back. Emergency exits, where front entrance where you came in, and there's another one in the back here. If you haven't yet, there is some water and there are articles for sale to my right over there. There's a sign-up table when you came in. Most of you probably saw it. It's just so that we can know where you're from, and if we are going to be in your area again, if you leave your phone number or email, we'll let you know we're coming back. We'll send you a poster. Print legibly, yes, because I've been entering it, and it's been a mystery. But all right. There are also trifold brochures at the back with a lot of really good information. Take one for yourself. Take more that you can hand out. And just be a good neighbor. If you feel like you want to start handing them out door to door and you see someone has no solicitors or no trespassing, go to the next house and leave it. We want to be good neighbors. We also have lawn signs in the back, and they're available by donation. So we would like to welcome you tonight to an event sponsored by Let's Talk Alberta. Let's Talk Alberta is not a TPA, but it's an educational society where our goal is to do just what the name says, let's talk. So these events offer an opportunity for people like you and me to come together, no matter what side we stand on the issues that are facing our country, our province, and to have a safe place to come together to share our opinions, our concerns, our questions in a respectful manner. Hopefully, each side will be willing to listen to the other, and I think by the time you leave, you'll realize we agree on a lot more than we disagree. So, as the name says, let's talk, we're not only interested in talking to you, but we want to hear you talking to us. So at the end of the presentations, we're going to have a question and answer period, and that's where we're going to ask you to bring up your concerns, your issues, your questions, and share those with us so that we are really having a conversation. We're not talking to you, but we're all talking together. As a society, we're fully dependent on you for our financial ability to continue to sponsor these events, to print the informational material that you see, to get the lawn signs printed, to advertise. We do everything we can to get out the facts and educate people in Alberta so that in October, when you go to the polls, you go there and you have made an informed decision when you make your vote. We're not funded by the government, large corporations, as they would like to make you believe. We don't have deep pockets. We depend on people like you and me who are concerned about the state of our province. And so we will pass a bucket later, and if you can, we would certainly appreciate anything that you can help, and know that just doing that, you're a part of what we're doing. Tonight we have 3 speakers, and what we would ask is when the speakers are giving their presentation, if you have questions or comments, just please hold them, and we'll give you that opportunity after a short break, and we'll have when you all come back for the question and answer period. Just out of curiosity, how many of you here have never been to a meeting like this before? Oh, that's great. Well, welcome, and I hope you leave feeling your time spent was valuable. The 3 pillars that undergird our goals and values are faith, family, and freedom. So traditionally, we always open our meetings in prayer, or we close them in prayer. So tonight I'm going to ask Patty Vold if she wouldn't mind coming and opening up this meeting in prayer.
The other thing I wanted to mention was that with Let's Talk Alberta, any donations do not have to be disclosed to the Alberta government or Elections Alberta or anything, because we're a society versus a third-party advertiser. So let's enter in prayer. Father God, we just thank you for this day that you have given to us. We thank you for this province that you have blessed us to be where we live. You have asked us to be stewards of the land, of our communities, and we ask that you show us how to do that. We thank you for giving us the water and the sunshine. We thank you for our neighbors. We thank you for discussions that are held at kitchen tables and at coffee shops. And we just ask, Lord, that you be in those conversations, whether they're with people we know or people we don't know. We ask, Lord, that you bless this evening, that your Spirit will be here among us. And we just thank you and praise you for all that you do. Amen.
Thank you, Patty. Our first speaker tonight is Sheane Meikle, and he comes to us with a wealth of knowledge. I've thought about it many times, and I thought, this is not the guy I want to play Trivial Pursuit against. So Sheane has had many years of experience working in the oil industry, and he's worked in multiple countries around the world, probably just about every continent. He's been involved in working towards a better Alberta for many, many years in different capacities, but his focus for this evening will be the history of Alberta. You'll find that what he presents is actually the root of why we're here tonight. And so without further ado, get ready for a fascinating history lesson. Sheane.
Okay. After that intro, I got a lot to live up to. If you see me going like this, it's because those lights make it hard to see my notes. As Sandy was saying, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, but it's the history of Ottawa's relationship with Alberta. Starting in the 1880s to about 1904, there was a huge American settler movement in what was then the Northwest Territories. And at that time, they were forming small little communities all over the provinces, or all over the territories, and they were giving them American names. How many here know the little spot on the map called Usona? There's a couple. I live 6 miles from Usona. Usona, during the early 1900s, had a population of around 500 people. Now it has a population of around 8 people. But do you know what Usona stands for? It stands for the United States of North America. How many people here know the town of Rimbey? Almost everybody knows Rimbey. Its original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie, its name was Yankee Valley. Then near me, there's a whole district called the Dakota District. All over the Alberta and Saskatchewan, there were towns that had names that were American sounding, or used to have names that were American sounding. And this made Ottawa very, very nervous. And this is one of the reasons why they decided to cut out the provinces from the territories, because it's a lot easier to absorb a territory than it is a province. So in 1904, then Minister of the Interior, Sir Clifford Sifton, made the following statement. We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity. Now, why do we care what a gentleman said 121 years ago? Well, the one main reason is Sir Clifford Sifton was the main author of the Alberta and Saskatchewan Acts. So in 1905, on September 1st, the Alberta Act was brought into being. Same day the Saskatchewan Act was also brought into being. How many people here have ever had the chance to read the Saskatchewan or the Alberta Act? A couple people. I would encourage everybody to go to the Government of Alberta website and download a copy of it. It's only a few pages long, but in there you will see that when we were formed as a province in name only. We were given the rights and responsibilities of a territory, not of a province. And we have been fighting ever since to get the rights and responsibilities of a province. So in 1913, the Railroad Act amendments were brought in by the federal government. And what they did is they made it illegal for a regional railway to cross provincial boundaries. So if you were loading your grain, let's say in Stettler, headed for Thunder Bay, you'd load in Stettler, you'd get to the Saskatchewan border, you'd have to offload it all, put it on a Saskatchewan carrier, do the same at the Manitoba border, same at the Ontario border. And this was a huge financial drain on the regional railways. And by 1939, the majority of them had gone out of business. By 1972, the last one closed their doors. But they had already been owned by another railway for several years before they changed their name and disappeared. How many people here have gone down Taylor Drive and have seen the big pillar off to the east along there that says Alberta Central Railway? There's a few people. That's the last remnant of the Alberta Central Railway in the province. The last remnant of the Alberta Northern Railway sits at Rycroft, Alberta. It is one of the last cabooses for Alberta Northern Railways. Now, the thing about it was that they also brought in that Eastern Railways were exempt from this new law. So that meant that it only affected the Western Railways. In 1930, the provinces negotiated with Ottawa to come up with the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement. And what this did is it gave back all the resources, control of resources, to the provinces. And at the time, Ottawa made it very clear that Alberta and Saskatchewan were not going to be treated the same as the other provinces, and that they were going to still maintain control over our resources. And we've been fighting to get that back ever since. In 1931, on December 11th, the King decreed the Statute of Westminster. And what that did is it gave sovereignty over land and resources to the people in care of the provinces. Not in care of Ottawa, in care of the provinces. So that means that there is not a drop of federal land in this province. It means that the national parks are not, if we enforced it, the national parks are provincial land, not federal land. And if we would have enforced this, we would never have had Jasper, because the province does a much better job of managing the forests than Ottawa does, as well as if it did happen and the town had got on fire, we could have got our firefighting resources in there, which the Ottawa blocked our firefighters from getting in there. In 1935, a voluntary marketing board was formed. And at that time, it was formed as a way to make it so that farmers would have a fair access to the market. That's what they were telling. But it was actually a way for them to seize Alberta grain, Western grain, period. I've talked to several farmers that were around, and they would ship their grain off, and Ottawa would send them a bill for the transportation of it. And they got nothing for the grain at all. And that marketing board that was formed was the Canada Wheat Board. In 1946, the Canada Wheat Board became mandatory for all Western farmers. So at the Manitoba border, you had to sell via the Wheat Board. Now, what did this mean? Well, if I was an Eastern farmer and I decided I wanted to sell to the United States, I would pull up to my bin, I would load my grain onto my truck, and I would drive across to the U.S. and sell my grain. If I was east of the Manitoba border or west of the Manitoba border, I'd pull up to my grain bin, load my grain on, pull into my local elevator, offload my grain, pull around to the far side of the elevator, reload that same grain, and pay a fee to the Canada Wheat Board for the honor of selling my own grain to the United States. Now, this stayed in effect until 2012. And the main reason that it was finally defeated was because of 13 farmers, known as the Dirty Dozen. They decided that it was worth going to jail for. And so they spent between 6 months and a year in jail each because they decided to run the border. And the Western Canadian farmers had had enough, and they started protesting like crazy about it. And finally, it was revoked in 2012. In 1947, we had just discovered our vast reserves of oil. We had discovered oil before that, but we didn't know how much we had. But as soon as we found out that we had vast quantities of oil, the federal government brought in the, let's call it the right words, the Federal Control of Oil Pricing and Pipelines. What that meant is that we could not sell our oil at world market prices. The price was set by the federal government, and we could not put a pipeline in the ground without their permission. And this stayed in effect for 3.5 years. And in 1950, they finally repealed it after complaints upon complaints. How many in here are old enough to remember the great flag debate of 1965? We've got a good number. So in 1965, our then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that he wanted to make a distinctly Canadian flag that represented the people from coast to coast. So the red bars on the side of the maple leaf represent the oceans, and the maple leaf in the center represents the people of Canada. Well, John Diefenbaker stood up in the House, and he questioned why it was the sugar maple leaf that was used, since it was only found in eastern Canada. Well, Pearson did not like this, so he forced the bill to closure. And when it went to vote, not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the current flag. And in 1967, on the centennial of Canada, many Western Canadian cities and towns refused to fly the maple leaf. Instead, they flew the red ensign, the other official flag of Canada. Now, this was already memory hold by the time I started school in the early 70s. Never heard anything about it. And the only reason that I knew is by going back and reading the historical documents to show that. But the maple leaf was never a Western Canadian flag. 1973, the federal government brought in the oil export taxation policies, and they capped Alberta's oil profits. Now, we were always told that we had an energy crisis in the 1970s. Well, it wasn't an energy crisis, it was a policy crisis. If you were an oil company and you had been given a quota of 100,000 barrels, and you produced 101,000 barrels, the profit from that extra barrel was going straight to Ottawa. Would you produce more than your quota? It wouldn't make any sense. So this has stayed in effect for 18 months. They kept this in effect. And finally, in 1974, they repealed it. But they weren't done with us yet, because just 6 years later, they brought in the National Energy Program, which had everything that the 1973-74 bill had in it, with the addition that they now demanded that we make selling our oil to the east a priority, and that they set the price of what we sold to the east. And this stayed in effect until 1988. And it was repealed during an election year by then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. And he made it sound like it was because he was being really friendly to the West. But in reality, it was because oil prices had dropped so low that it was costing them more to enforce the program than they were getting out of it. So they were losing money on every barrel that they were bringing in under the National Energy Program. So he tricked many Western Canadians into thinking that he was friendly towards the West, but it had nothing to do with that. In the 1980s, we had several things happen, 80s and 90s. We had, first off, in 1982, the Canadian Constitution was brought home, and many people cheered that it had come home, but if you read it and read the old BNA Act, it actually did us a lot more damage to the West by them bringing that in. And it would take me too long to go through all the details of all the problems with it, but it wasn't necessarily a good thing when they brought the Constitution home to Canada. Then we had the first Quebec referendum, and in 1995 we had the second Quebec referendum. Now, we can thank Quebec for the second referendum, because in 1998, following it, the federal government went to the Supreme Court and said, is it actually possible for a province to secede from the Union? And they said, yes, but these are the things that they have to do in order to do it. So the federal government took back the Supreme Court's recommendations and it is what became formed as the Clarity Act. And that is why we're following the steps of the Clarity Act and what it says we need to do. Now, there are other ways to do it, but that's the way to do it. The most peaceful and democratic way to do it is to follow the Clarity Act. So then let's jump forward to 2012. And in 2012, and I definitely have to hold it over here for the numbers, they brought, the federal government brought in Bill C-38, the Jobs, Growth and Prosperity Act, which gave Ottawa complete control over all of Alberta's projects. With that, that meant that we couldn't put a pipeline in the ground. We couldn't do a major highway. We couldn't build a major skyscraper without federal approval. In 2019, they brought in federal carbon pricing. And we all know what that did to our oil industry. In 2019, they brought in Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban on the West Coast. Now, these four bills, last fall, Danielle Smith, the Premier, wrote an MOU with the Prime Minister that would have eliminated all four of those bills. But within 1 week of that MOU being signed, Parliament met and voted it down. And many of the people that voted it down were Western Canadian MPs. So our MPs aren't even looking out for our best interests. So that now brings us forward to modern time. So we have one bill that has passed and has became law 3 days ago. And we have two bills that are in different stages of coming into being. Bill C-8, which is the Internet censorship bill, is in its second reading in the House. And what that does is it gives the minister, with the stroke of his pen, the ability to wipe you off the Internet. And by wipe you off the Internet, I don't mean just get rid of your ISP. I mean, that wipes you off. No more online banking, no more anything to do with the Internet. Your identity on the Internet will be gone with the stroke, and you have no recourse against it. There is no appeal process in the system for that. Then we have Bill C-9, which is the anti-hate speech law, which just came into the actual law 3 days ago. And what that bill does is if anybody complains about you and accuses you of hate speech, they can arrest you and seize all your assets. And under that, there is basis for you to appeal the decision of you being arrested, but not for the seizure of your assets. And this can be used for everything from quoting scripture at somebody to doing what we're doing tonight. They can accuse us of hate speech. That bill, in conjunction with Bill C-8, is basically puts us into a totalitarian state. Then you have Bill C-22. Bill C-22 is the anti-encryption bill. And what that does is, okay, right now, if they want to listen in on my telephone calls because they think I've committed a crime and they're trying to catch me, they have to go to the judge and get a warrant to do so. Under Bill C-22, they have full and open access to all your communications online. That means that they don't need a warrant to be able to listen in on your communications. They're forcing all of the social media companies and communication companies to remove their encryption for them, so that you cannot encrypt your communications between two people. You combine those three bills, and we are in for a world of hurt. And that is why I believe our only path forward is independence. So I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheane. Our next speaker is John Reil, and he is a former Canadian provincial politician who served as leader of the Alberta First Party. John's political journey reflects his involvement in Alberta's political landscape, particularly through his leadership roles and electoral campaigns. His major political achievements include serving as the founding president of the Alberta First Party and later becoming its leader, where he represented the party in the 2001 general election. He's also played a role in the Social Credit Party. Before founding Alberta First, he has been in the military, and he's an all-around nice guy, and so I would like to welcome John up to the podium.
I've been associated with the Alberta Prosperity Project as a volunteer. I've been associated with Let's Talk Alberta as a volunteer. And that's the first time I've ever had my political background expressed to people who are listening to me. And it was done for a reason. And if you have just a couple of minutes, I'll tell you the reason. We started the Alberta First Party in the late 90s, middle to late 90s. And the platform that we had as Alberta First, you might recognize that term, Alberta First, is still being used. You'll see it on clothing here. The platform that we had for Alberta First was very, very simple. It was federal government, obey the Constitution, get out of our business, and we'll stay out of yours. That was the whole reason for the existence of the Alberta First Party back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So you might give that a thought for a second or two and consider Danielle Smith's position right now. Danielle Smith wants a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Now, think about it. Isn't that what we wanted 30 years ago? Isn't that what we've been working for 30 years? All of the things that Danielle Smith is putting forward in the referendum coming up in the fall are part and parcel of what the Alberta First platform was 30 years ago. Anybody have any idea of what's been done in each and any of those requests that she's had? You might say nothing. That's not quite true, because Ralph Klein recognized that at least we had to look at our provincial police force, and he was the one who began the process of moving the sheriffs into the law enforcement field, out of the courtrooms and into law enforcement. And that has continued under the current government. So I used to talk when I was doing this about the financial reasons to leave Canada. And they're very obvious. When you look at the equalization program, you'll find that between 21 and 26% of the budgets of the maritime provinces are totally dependent on equalization. Without equalization, these provinces could not run their provinces. They wouldn't have enough money. Where does that money come from? It comes from us. I think my wife looked up a stat the other day that said that over the last 10 or 15 years, $100,000 per household has been granted to equalization by every Alberta household. So those things are pretty obvious. But you know that currently, of the 10 provinces of Canada, 9 are in recession. The only one that isn't is Alberta, and we're not doing anywhere nearly as well as we should. In Ontario, 47% of Canada's unemployed are in Ontario. The auto industry in Ontario is functioning at slightly less than 50% of what it was 2 years ago. They're having a heck of a time. The same type of pressures being applied to their steel industry, their aluminum industry, and many of their other mining industries. So now let's look at Mark Carney. Mark Carney has said to Alberta, as our premier goes to him on bended knee and says, "Please, sir, may I have more?" like Charles Dickens' novel said. He said, "If you agree to spend the better part of $20 billion on carbon capture, we'll let you twin a pipeline along the Trans Mountain route and make some more money." So what does our government in Alberta do? Hey, that's a great idea. We just have to spend $20 billion and we can have another pipeline. Can you have the Northern Gateway? No. You can have it if you want, but you can't have the tanker ban lifted. So what does Mark Carney do? He goes to BC and he says, Alberta wants another pipeline. And BC says, we don't want it. And Mark Carney said, no problem. How about if we share Alberta's revenue with you? How about if we give you some of Alberta's royalties? Hey, great idea. I guess we'll go for the pipeline. It has to be done that way because if you actually charge the producers more money to send the oil down the pipeline, they wouldn't use it because it would be economically not feasible. So the only way the government could do it was to share our money, again, with another province. Which begs the question, if they can charge us for moving our oil across their province, what about the $79 billion a year they move across our province by rail and road? Can we charge them? No. Why? Because we're Alberta. So then you get Doug Ford in Ontario. Doug Ford says, hey, look what they did in British Columbia. Prime Minister Carney has said that he's willing to share somebody else's wealth, which is Alberta's in this case, with British Columbia in order to get them to approve a pipeline. If they can have some of the wealth, how about we revive the idea of a pipeline from Alberta to Ontario? You think that's because he wants a pipeline to Ontario, or is it because he wants to get the same deal that BC got, which is a share of Alberta's royalty revenue? So all of this combined, I don't get angry very often about politics, but all of this combined has made me really, really, really upset. You know, we've got more land than almost 80% of the nations in the world. We have a larger GDP in Alberta than 80% of the nations in the world. We have more farmland than 91% of the nations in the world. We have a higher GDP per capita than 92% of the nations in the world. We're in good shape. And we would be in good shape if it wasn't for the fact that we're being stripped of our wealth by a federal government that regards us as a cash cow, not as a province. Now, here's where I'm going with this. 30 years ago, we wanted Alberta politicians to stand up to Ontario and say, this is the Constitution, this is the law, the supreme law of the land, would you please enforce it? So instead what we have a premier that goes on bended knee to Ottawa and says, you know, we'll spend $20 billion and share our resource revenue if you let us have a pipeline. That's BS. We have, under the Constitution, control of our resources. It's time we took a page from Quebec's book. You know what happened when they passed the Clarity Act in the federal parliament? You know what Quebec did? The very next day, they passed the law saying that doesn't apply in Quebec. And what did the federal government do? Oh, okay. So it's time, I realize she's the wrong gender, but it's time that our premier in this province grew some balls. It's time for her to actually move on to saying, this is what the Constitution says, this is how our country is constructed, get the heck out of our business, we're going to do our business, and you're going to stay out of it, and we're going to keep the money. We're going to have our own police force. We're going to collect our own taxes. Mark Carney took $3 billion out of the Canada Pension Fund. Why? To invest in the Canadian Sovereign Fund. You know what a sovereign fund is supposed to be? A sovereign fund is supposed to be wealth that's generated by a country that they use to invest and improve the lives of the citizens of the country. And it's like Norway. They have a sovereign fund with something like $1.5 trillion in it. Where did it come from? Oil revenue. Where did Canada's $25 billion sovereign fund come from? Carney borrowed the money. He borrowed the money. So when you look at, and then you look at Brookfield, which my wife has made some really interesting memes about an organization called Crookfield. Anyway, when you look at the organization that he's put together, Brookfield uses very little of their own money to bring together money from sovereign wealth funds and private investors to buy actual infrastructure and businesses, to own pipelines, to own processing facilities, to own stuff. And then what they do is these companies, of course, they buy them when they're distressed. They have a lot of trouble. There's additional financing that has to come in. They refinance them. And all of a sudden, the original investors have lost money, which is you and me. But Brookfield still owns it. So it's time. And I make this plea. I also a demand. I make this demand of our provincial politicians. Stop being focused on Canada. We elect you. We have a federal government. they can focus on Canada, and they can negotiate with you over things that they might feel would benefit Canada that we might share in developing. That's their job. Your job is to represent me, you, Albertans, Albertans' needs, Albertans' prosperity, and the rights and privileges of Alberta under our Constitution. So what I'm saying to Danielle Smith and the UCP government, I'm not suggesting we get rid of Danielle Smith. There's a lot of things she's tried to do that I appreciate. I'm not suggesting we get rid of her. What I'm suggesting is get off your butt, get it done. You don't need referenda to do this. You don't need a referendum to demonstrate to the people of Alberta that an Alberta pension plan would be far superior to a CPP that can be rated by the federal government to put money into a sovereign wealth fund. So that's my message to them. My message to you is send that message to your MLAs. Tell them that their job is to represent Alberta. Their job is to make sure that Alberta functions legally and ethically under the provisions of the Canadian Constitution and get the federal government the heck out of our business. Thank you very much.
Although I have traveled quite a bit since February with Let's Talk Alberta, this is the first time that I have the opportunity to introduce someone who needs no introduction. And a lot of you know a lot of stuff about Chris Scott, but I want to introduce him by something that you probably don't know. Over a year ago, I had a friend come from Montreal, and we'd heard about Chris, we'd heard about the Whistle Stop Cafe, and we thought, let's go down, maybe we will be able to catch a glimpse of him. We went down, we had a wonderful meal, by the way, go to the Whistle Stop for food, it's great. And we didn't get to see you. But I had this picture of Chris. He was just someone that I held in awe. And I still do, but not for the reasons you might think. I've watched Chris, I hope I get through this. Chris has a name, he's well known, but I watch him when we go to events. And he is a servant at heart. I watch him come when he could be wanting to stand up and be talking to people and receive accolades, but where is he? He's in the kitchen chopping onions. He's ready to help at any point to anyone who comes by him. I was so afraid to speak to him at first, but now I count it such a privilege to be able to tour with them and to say, Chris, I appreciate everything you do, and I get the privilege for the first time to introduce you tonight. So would you please welcome Chris Scott to the podium.
Well, that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much, Sandy. And now, Max, can I twist this part here? Loosen here? Oh, yeah. I get it, I think. No, you better do it. No, I got it. It's good. It's all good. I got it. So now I'm really nervous because not only do I never prepare a speech, but I also didn't ask anyone to check, make sure my fly was up. So I'm extra nervous. That's why I'm sweating. It's not because of the lights and the heat in here. That's it. Anyway, you know, what Sandy said is very relevant to my life, what I've learned about myself over the last few years. And I'll start off with saying before I found myself in the public eye, before I found myself you know, fighting the government and doing all these exciting things and going to jail and going to Ottawa and getting death threats and these things that most of us don't have the blessing to experience. I realized even before this all happened, as I was cooking at the Whistle Stop, and I didn't want to cook, by the way, I bought that place as an investment, thinking, oh, I'll just buy this restaurant, I'll leave all the staff, it'll be the same for 40 years, and this will just be a piece of property investment that I own. Well, that didn't work out. I ended up cooking. And at first I was terrified because I'd never cooked in a commercial kitchen. Didn't know what I was doing, but I had some good people that were willing to help me out and teach me, and I caught on pretty quick. But what I realized as I would put out a meal and watch from the kitchen, and it was harder at that time, and I cut a hole in the wall so I could do this better. As I would watch them enjoy that meal, their faces light up when they had something delicious that I created, I felt so good. I discovered that in the mornings when it was quiet or not, and I was the only one there, and I was cooking and serving and dispensing fuel and those types of things, washing my hands in between, I realized I actually like pouring coffee for people. I like bringing them their food from the kitchen. I enjoyed serving people. It's likely the most fulfilling thing I've ever experienced in my life. And before that, I was kind of a selfish dink, to put it bluntly. I didn't really think about other people all that much. I mean, of course I did, but not like I do now. I'm very aware, and maybe it's because so many people interact with me, they share their stories. It's changed my outlook, and it's brought me to a place where I want to do something to improve the future. And I don't just want to go along for the ride. And I certainly am not going to allow people tell me, oh, you can't do that, or you'll never do that, or it's impossible. Don't even try. If I still drank beer, I would say hold my beer and do it anyway. So, what does that mean in the context of Alberta sovereignty, of a question on self-determination? I've come to realize that we face a very serious problem in Alberta, and the problem is us, Albertans. We have this problem where we tend to not talk to each other or cancel each other or threaten or belittle or dehumanize rather than have important conversations about important topics. And now, as I consider the convoluted question we're going to be asked in October, no, it's not a constitutionally binding question that's going to result in independence. But it is a question on self-determination. And it's a question that other people in other places have fought wars to get the opportunity to do. They've lost thousands and in some cases millions of lives for the opportunity to go to a place and answer a question of self-determination, independence, sovereignty. Now, because we're going to be asked that question, I believe that it is absolutely critical that we talk to each other about it. And not just our own echo chambers, which, yes, it's mostly an echo chamber in our meetings because people who disagree with me just don't come here and sit in the front row and challenge me. I wish they would. But we have to talk about these things because we're going to be asked the question. And to be asked the question, it's not just an opportunity, it is a blessing of a lifetime. Do you understand that? Are there any history buffs in the room? Do you know what sacrifices generally have to be made for people to answer a question of self-determination in their nation or in their province? It's a big deal. Now, I forgot my phone. I had some notes. I wanted to read you a comment that I got to the Let's Talk Alberta chat, which is at letstalkalberta.com. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. And it was a lady from Red Deer who gave her address, and her email was something, I won't say what her email was, but it was like her name and then sweet or sweet her name, something like that, implying that it's a sweet lady. No, that was not the case. It started off with, do you morons think that I want you on my property? And she's talking about a Let's Talk Alberta volunteer who was handing out trifolds to encourage this conversation. And to answer that question, no, I never considered whether or not you want me there. And I didn't ask. I don't consider whether you want me to say good morning to you either. I just say it because it's a polite thing to do. And because we're facing such a critical question, I'm going to approach you and talk to you about it because I believe that's what we need to do. So no, I don't need your permission to talk to you about these things. So it started off on that tone. And it went on about some name calling, some things to suggest that the email was erroneous, the sweet part of it. But they were basically saying, did you not see the Forever Canadian signs on my lawn and the Canadian flags in my windows and all of these things? I'm thinking, those are the people I want to talk to. And those are the people that should want to talk to me. Because if you're one of those people and you're watching me drive around in an RV all over Alberta, speaking to tens or hundreds of thousands probably of people by now, wouldn't you want to explain to me why you take the position you do and try and bring me to your side? Because I'm going to change thousands of people's minds just by presenting the facts and speaking the truth. I will. And I will make a difference, as you could as well. So if you oppose me and if you don't share my opinions, if you believe that I'm in error, you should be trying to talk to me. You should be seeing the 30 blue signs on my lawn at home and knocking on my door and saying, hey, I would just like to ask you why you would choose Alberta. Why would you choose Alberta instead of choosing unity? And I'll have the conversation with you. Respectfully, of course. Certainly doesn't help when you start off by calling the other side a moron, although guilty. We're all guilty, right? And I like to believe that sometimes it's all in jest, it's in good fun, but a lot of people don't take it that way. So, what do I do? How do I serve? How do I serve my neighbors in this situation? I have to talk to them. And I have to encourage my neighbors, my friends, my brothers and sisters, to talk to each other so we can get to the best possible outcome. Regardless of which side of the conversation you're on, you're going to have an opportunity to answer the question. And it actually hurts my brain and my heart probably hurts my heart more than my brain to think that that lady in Red Deer may make the wrong decision for her and her family because she's unwilling to talk. Maybe I would make the wrong decision if somebody who didn't share my opinions failed to come up to me and present a case for their opinion to me. What a shame. What a shame that would be. One of the things that I've done that's turning out to be way more expensive than I thought, over the last few days, I've spent the majority of the time in our little Let's Talk Alberta office in Mirror, Alberta, with some friends of mine, and we've been printing off those trifolds that you see at the front. We have been packaging them and doing mail-outs to the areas that we're going to have events so that more people join. And I'm finding that we're spending close to, Sandy, plug your ears, Patty, probably plug your ears too, about $1,500 a day. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And that's not counting the 10 or 12 hours that we sit there packaging these things and folding them. This is a servant's mission. If you don't believe me, please sign up as a volunteer and we'll show you. So that's what we're doing. One of the things I did today, after watching a fella who I admire somewhat on social media, his name is Hans McCarthy. Does anyone know that name? He's a First Nations guy from Frog Lake, and he's speaking out he's speaking out about the situations that his people are facing there, specifically in the structure of the band council. And he's got a lot of really good points. He doesn't share my opinion about Alberta independence, but that doesn't matter. I admire his tenacity in speaking out for what he believes in. And there's other people speaking about these things as well, but more so, I'm seeing people that look more like me telling me that I can't speak because this is somebody else's land. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting concept. So I started digging into this. And I started, what does this mean? What is this person that lives in Red Deer, off a reserve, probably has no family, First Nations family or anything, why are they telling me that I can't participate in democracy because of something to do with the treaty? So what do? Argue? No. I read the treaties. And I start researching. And I spent a lot of time and effort creating this. This is my latest little booklet. It's basically just things that I've learned. And I called it an educational booklet for Alberta, treaties, First Nations, and opportunities for all Albertans. Because I don't see our First Nations brothers and sisters as obstacles or different or anything like that. I see them each as an Albertan with skin in the game who stands to benefit or suffer a consequence depending on how this fall goes. Therefore, it is my duty, even though they're 6% of Alberta or whatever, to listen to them, find out what it is that would be, you know, what we can do to help fix some of the issues that we're both facing, and some are facing alone, some are facing together. How do we do that in the context of sovereignty, working together for common cause towards a better future? I wrote a blog not too long ago, I guess in January, and it's called Why Alberta Independence May Benefit First Nations People the Most. And I lay out my case. You might disagree with me. Read it. If you disagree with me, tell me why. Because I want the opportunity we have in October to benefit every person here. Every single person. I want to have a better future after this October. Well, I mean, technically it wouldn't be just after this October, but it would begin the process to start a better future. So in this booklet, I included the text of all the treaties. I took the time to look up who the signatories were to the treaties, learn a little bit about them, most of which I've forgotten because I'm old and my memory doesn't work the way it used to. But it's very interesting, and I've learned a lot. And everything I've learned has supported my argument that Alberta independence may benefit First Nations people even more. Now, there will be some people online, I can almost hear it through the internet, my feelings, because that's how they work, that I have no standing to talk about this because I'm a pink Irishman. BS. When I see something that I know is wrong going on to people around me, I will speak up about it, and I don't care what ancestry you have. When I read statistics that actually bring a tear to my eye about some of the outcomes for our First Nations brothers and sisters that they face in the current structure, it is painful to think about it. What's even more painful is to think that there are people, some of whom aren't even First Nations, that are advocating and fighting to continue this. Now, Hans doesn't share my opinion on independence, but he wants change. We both want a better outcome, not only for our groups, but for everyone as a whole. We just have different opinions on how we get there. But the key is, there is some unity there because we both want a better future. So if Hans and I took the time to talk to each other, and our groups talk to each other, imagine what we could do. Imagine what we could do if we started working together, thinking about these problems, how we could right some of the wrongs of the past and move forward into a prosperous future together. Imagine what those people who are pitting us against each other would think. Imagine, they'd be crapping their pants. Oh, these people aren't fighting. They're not divided. They're actually working together for something better. They know what we're trying to do. They know we're trying to divide them. They know that we're pitting them against each other so we can maintain the control that we've always had that's benefited who? Not you and I, but them. Imagine what we could do if we worked together. We've done it in the past. We built some absolutely amazing things as Albertans. We've overcome incredible obstacles as Albertans. And we have an opportunity to do it again. That's why Let's Talk Alberta exists. Because if we have this opportunity, we better reach out and take it together, not individually in our little bubbles and echo chambers, but we got to start talking to each other so that we can actually accomplish something rather than continue the same thing that we've been doing for 159 years that has resulted in poor outcomes for many and certainly reduced prosperity for all. So that's my message. Let's talk. If you disagree with me, if you disagree with my personal opinion that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, and it stands to benefit every person in Alberta, I want to hear why you disagree. I would love for you to try and change my mind. Present the case for the status quo. Present the case for remaining within Confederation. Tell me how that path is going to benefit me, my family, and my friends and neighbors. And you might just bring me to your side. But if you don't present a case, and all you can do is lash out with emotional arguments and belittle me and dehumanize me and try and encourage other people to hurt me and steal my signs, and talk crap on Facebook from behind fake names, I will crush you. I will bring more people with me, and I will crush you. Not physically, but your mission to preserve the status quo that doesn't benefit us. I'll bring a lot of people with me. We already are. This movement is growing. It's tripled, estimated it's tripled in the last 4 years. Tripled. From an estimated 10% to some figures as high as 30%. One figure is as high as 46%. Guess which group that is? First Nations people polled earlier this spring. 46% of the respondents favored changing Alberta's relationship with Canada. We have a lot to talk about. But before we do that, it's hot in here, and I'm sure everyone needs something to drink. So I see there's some drinks over there. There may be some, am I allowed to say that there's pizza there? There might be some pizza back there if you're quick enough. And also, Sheane is bothering me with the yellow donation buckets that are very intimidating because we kind of expect you to throw something in there. That's kind of why I mentioned what this is costing. Like, there are people online that are saying this movement is about grifting. No, it's not. Every single person that's volunteering in this organization is likely at a net loss financially, and we won't be compensated. That's just the way it is. If you count our time, I mean, some of us are putting in full-time hours. $70,000, $80,000 a year worth of free labor. This isn't about taking something. This is about doing what we believe, what we know is the right thing, and asking people to support us in doing that. And you can support in other ways. You can sign up as a volunteer. You can come to the office and help fold papers, or you can just have conversations. That's helpful as well. But the sad reality is that the yellow buckets must be filled so that we can do things like spend $1,500 a day getting information out to people. These things here, I would appreciate it if you would take one. I think I only brought 25 because they're ridiculous expensive to print. Read it and give me your feedback. Let'sTalkAlberta.com has our contact button there. If you disagree with something or if you have a better idea or a better interpretation, different interpretation, please, I want to hear about it. But take one of these and read it. And when you do, if you don't mind, just remember that they're expensive and put something extra in the bucket. You don't have to, but it would certainly help us continue doing it. Anyway, once the buckets are finished going around, that's why I'm trying to ramble longer because I forgot about these. We're going to take a 10, 15-minute break. We'll polish off that pizza, grab a bite, drink or something like that, and then we're going to come back specifically so that I can hear from you folks. And I would encourage you, if you disagree with me, be one of the first people to put your hands up and ask a question. It would be an honor for me to field questions from those of you who disagree with me. And by doing so, I think regardless of the outcome, I believe that we have a better future if we just keep talking. A great man once said, when people stop talking, bad things happen. So let's not be like my sweet friend in Red Deer and shut down the conversation before it even starts. Let's talk and make sure good things happen. Thank you very much.
And the value of our youth. So what makes me wanna hold on to what I know is right, and in the face of opposition, to stand my ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood and in my bones. It gets stronger every day. When my body tries to move in and take it all away, I draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Yeah, it's living on the land, watching life come and go. It's working hard and playing hard, in sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides. He's given us all the tools we need to enjoy this life and thrive. So what makes us wanna hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, to stand our ground and fight. Our Alberta roots run deep. It's in our blood and in our bones. It gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move it and take it all away, we just draw a line there in the sand, stand our ground and say, our Alberta roots, you can't hide them, they define us. They made us who we are today, and when life's this good, you just can't throw it away. Our Alberta roots run deep. You can't dig them out or pull them out. They go deeper every day. So when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, just draw your line there in the sand, stand your ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Run deep. Something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. When the front wheel starts to wobble, pull your truck on over. You might not be the only nut that's loose. You can't just ignore it or pretend that it's all fine. That shaky wheel is gonna cook your goose. Something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, don't claim to have the answers or the way to set back history's racing clock. But I know it's time to leave the couch, time to hit our knees, rebuild this country on a solid rock. Something's gotta change, yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta, it's up to me and you. You've heard that real insanity is to try the same thing over again. I wonder why you get the same results. There's got to be more options. There's got to be a way to bring this crazy train wreck to a halt. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. Let's talk Alberta, it's up to me and you. Let's talk Alberta, it's up to me and you.
Q&A microphone. Okay.
Okay, well, we're waiting for the other speakers to get up here. I've got a couple of favors to ask of you. The first favor is the algorithms play havoc with our social media. So I'm going to ask you to go to letstalkalberta.com or freedomcalendar.net and go in there and grab the posters for upcoming events and share them to people that you might know in that area. And ask them to share them to some people that they know. And keep it going that way. It's what I call the shampoo method. And as you can tell, I know lots about shampoo. But the reason I call it the shampoo method is from the Clairol commercials from the 70s and 80s. You tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on and so on. So if you could do that, that would be great. Also, if you know anybody with highway frontage that would be willing to put one of our banners up, especially if you know somebody along Highway 2, Highway 1, or Highway 16, the 3 major artery highways. But any highway will do. We want to get these up where they're visible. I've got a few left in my van to go out, and I've got 15 more on their way. I'll be here in a week or so. So we want to get these out everywhere. We also have some 4x8 signs coming later this week, and we want to get them out where they're visible as well. We want to cover this province so that between all of us that are putting signs out, we have signs you can't move 10 feet without seeing a sign. So, okay, let's get going with the questions.
I have a question, Shane.
Okay.
What's the purpose of Let's Talk Alberta signs?
To drive people to the website so that they get involved in the conversation.
So I just wanted to mention, you're going to see signs all over the place. Signs everywhere, signs. And some of the signs you see are specifically advocating for an outcome in the referendum. Next fall, you're going to see signs advertising or encouraging you to vote for a specific candidate. That's not what Let's Talk Alberta is about. Yes, we have our own personal opinions as to what the best future for Alberta may be. But our goal is to facilitate these types of town hall meetings so we can talk about the things. So we don't tell you who you should vote for or what you should vote on the referendum or how you should answer the questions. We talk about those topics, and hopefully by the end of the night, you have a better idea and understanding on where you land, and then you can make up your own mind on what you choose. That's what we're trying to do.
We actually also cannot as an organization, we can't give an opinion. As a society, we cannot tell you how to vote. We can give you the facts, but
we can give our opinions.
Yeah.
We just can't tell you
That's what I'm saying.
to do.
As an organization, we can't, but as a person, I can tell you how I feel.
Yeah. How do you feel? Hot. Don't ever ask Shane that question.
I'll leave it for now.
So the way it's going to work for the Q&A, guys, is that Jasper, the guy with the hat, raises his hand. He has a microphone, okay? So if you got a question, just raise your hand. We're going to get the microphone to you. What we're trying to do is something like this. Hey, but I don't know how to think about those things. Because what happens is that this is being live streamed, and people on the live stream can absolutely not hear if you do something like this. Thank you.
I've got a question over here.
I'm hoping that the referendum goes the way we want it to in October. Is there a realistic estimation that can be said right now about how long it'd take before we are truly free?
Well, I'm a little bit of a pessimist here. Contrary to what my friend Naheed would tell you and what the media tells you, I don't believe that our government at any level will, in all fairness, facilitate the will of the people. I don't believe it. I'm convinced, and maybe you don't agree with me, that if the referendum goes towards pursuing the path to sovereignty, I believe that the government's probably going to say, well, just put that on the back burner. We just have to beat the NDP. How many times have we heard this before? Well, don't worry about that now. We just need to fundraise. We just need your money. We just need you to forget about self-determination and only fear the NDP and support us for the next election. I might be wrong. So, you know, short of something drastic happening in Alberta politics, that puts us past 2027 for another referendum, for a binding referendum, and then, you know, kind of 6 months to a year after that. So, you know, that's putting us out into close to 2030. Now, there is a different way, depending on how 2027 goes, that can make it a lot quicker, but that's my thoughts on the current situation.
My name's Michelle, and we're hearing so much from the chiefs, not the Indigenous, from the chiefs about how we can't separate. So I would like you to elaborate on that, someone, a little bit more, to counter their argument.
Well, the interesting thing is, obviously, the chiefs don't speak for most Indigenous folks, and even people that don't agree with me, they would agree that they're often not represented by their leadership. And that's apparent in the conditions that some of our First Nations friends face on the reserves. It's not a good situation in some cases. So the chiefs are advocating for the status quo. Why? Well, the status quo treats some people very, very well. We exist in Canada, all over Canada, under what I lovingly refer to, not lovingly, I don't know what the word is, what I refer to as kind of British colonial reward rule. So what the British Crown would do across history, everywhere by the way, is install a governor, and the one job the governor had was to keep peace and order. Peace, order, and good governance. That's what Canada's motto is, right? Prior to the Indian Act, our First Nations groups weren't ruled by a chief. They had a matriarchy, many of them, most of them. And it was elders that decided the course of what the tribe was going to do. Well, the British changed that with the Indian Act, and they put chiefs in charge. Because when you have one person in charge, if you control the leader or you convince the leader, you bring the people. And that helps you maintain peace, order, and good governance. So right now, and as is outlined in some of my information I put there, there are some chiefs that they benefit greatly. And you can take a drive through many places in Alberta, and on some reserves you'll see beautiful houses, boats, new Suburbans in the driveway, and then you go 3 blocks and it's an absolute hellscape. And you know who lives in what houses. So the premise is, because there's treaties, Albertans can no longer participate in democracy. And I reject that completely on its face and in the facts. And I've dug into that. I've read the treaties, the actual text of the treaties, which is included in this little booklet that I made. The treaty texts are all in here. It is my opinion, based on what I've read, and not just this, but in some other things, particularly Clifford Sifton, Volume 2, A Lonely Eminence. He describes his time in politics, helping to settle the West, dealing with First Nations groups and settlers from all sorts of places. I truly believe that the premise of the treaties was not to chain people. It wasn't to bind a group of people to a reserve. It was to free people from famine and war and all sorts of other things, even sickness. Like there was good intent behind a lot of it, but it changed. And it changed when that rule by reward structure was imposed. All of the sudden, it wasn't that we're trying to have this peaceful coexistence, help people come into the new world, new traditions, because the West was happening, right? The buffalo was diminished. There was groups of people that were obviously devastated by disease, and it was a difficult time. There was slavery, there was warring between tribes, there was no central authority. And when the Crown came, and you can read this in some of the writings from the Crown back then, it's the way I read that is it was like, hey, there's these people, they're good people, they're our people, and we want to exist with them. We want to help them learn these ways so that they can survive and sustain. That's why they taught farming and agriculture and gave seeds and twine, and the treaties allowed for hunting and gathering resources across their traditional lands so they could persevere throughout the hardship that they had faced. Now, things changed, right? We ended up with a situation where the federal government owns all of the reserve land. I don't know if people know that, but the Indigenous groups don't own that land. The federal government owns it. They have care and control and custody of the land. And they just allow First Nations groups to use it. So when they say we're a sovereign nation, yes, they're a sovereign nation, but of no land. Ottawa owns that. And I think that's preposterous. I think that they should own that. Like, if the land was set aside for their use, why not give it to them? Why not allow the people that inhabit it to have title to the land so they can get a loan against their house and start a business? Like, these are some of the shackles that we have an opportunity to break, but it's not our job to break them. We can talk about it, but it's the signatories that have to decide, right? First Nations groups have to decide, are we going to continue with the status quo under these statistics, living this way, or are we going to look to this opportunity to change things and better our future? It's their choice. Now, in here, I do point out that the treaties have survived change. They survived the Confederation of Canada. They survived new provinces entering into Canada. They survived the creation of Alberta and Saskatchewan. They survived the transfer of sovereignty over resources and land from the Crown to the province. They survived all these things. They survived the repatriation of the Constitution. And at all except for the repatriation of the Constitution, the treaties weren't relevant to the conversation. Our current Constitution enshrines the treaties as requiring consultation and accommodation. Yes, but what's happened is there are some Supreme Court justices that have interpreted the Constitution and the treaties in such a way that suggests that consent is required. Now, if you have one small group of people controlling the democratic will of a large group of people, that's not fair, right? And I don't agree with that. But there has to be consultation. So all this to say, it's gone from an attempt to not have what happened in the United States happen in Canada, to include all people in the prosperity and freedom going forward into the future in this new world that became Canada, and it became something different. And now there are people who want to advocate for continuing this, even going so far as to say, well, you know, if you pursue this, if you exercise democracy, we'll just break the law. We'll block all your projects. Maybe block elections, I don't know. And this is why it's so important to talk about it.
The idea of consultation is to determine whether the actions that are being proposed have any impact on the treaty. Does it have any impact on the relationship between the Crown, the provincial Crown in this case, and the federal Crown, and the other signatories to the treaty? That's it. It's not to provide a means of extortion of money from one level to another. It's to determine whether the treaties are impacted by the direction that might be taken on the issues that are being consulted. That's one thing. The next thing is that the Canadian government spends more money on the First Nations in Canada than we spend on national defense. They
Can we just get the microphone, please? The microphone, please.
Yeah.
The government spends $32 billion annually, plus additional requests, and there are only around 2 million Indigenous people living in Canada, and we have only around 200,000 Indigenous people living in Alberta.
Yeah, no, just a minute. I understand that. My point is that there are other funds that are also put forward by the federal government. And the point I was going to make is that we spend more money on the Indigenous population than we do on national defense. And when you go on to many reserves, the poverty is striking.
I do have to point something out here, and this is important. A lot of people, and this causes division, by the way, a lot of people believe that we're giving our tax money to Indigenous people. That is not the case. In some cases, there are programs that are for Indigenous people that benefit them, and I agree that there should be. The vast majority of that money is a trust fund that was set up by the Crown for the Indigenous people in Canada. It was never our money. It's theirs. And Ottawa uses that as a bargaining tool. They use that as a method of reward. And I think it's absolutely sickening. And they actually let people believe that it's their tax dollars doing it. It's not our tax dollars. These are monies that the Crown agreed to set aside for First Nations groups that was never our money to begin with. So, you know, I don't take issue with that. I do take issue with something that's already belongs to them being used as a way to control the narrative. I completely disagree with that, and that's one thing that we absolutely could change. If there was, if the signatories agreed to negotiate that and maybe negotiate with Alberta, I would be an advocate for making sure that every penny due to Indigenous groups went to them, out of Ottawa's hands, into their hands, no more control from Ottawa.
Here, here.
a lot of people do not realize where that money comes from. Do you realize that every time that every bit of oil reserves, every revenue, every bit of land rental, most people do not realize that a lot of the land on the reserves is rented out to farmers in the area. And all of that rental goes into the Indian Fund. All of it goes into there. That's all money that is their money, but Ottawa doles it out to them. And then they have the audacity that in the last federal budget, they used the Indian Fund, which isn't their money, as a guarantor against the budget, which they had no right to do.
They did the same thing with the CPP.
Right.
My name is Marlene. I just have a quick question. I'm here on a fact-finding mission and to become educated so I can vote as an educated voter. Where is the best place to learn more about this as far as the internet or that type of situation where it's truthful information, not...
To learn more about what? The Indigenous issue or all of it?
No, the whole Let's Talk Alberta, the sovereignty situation.
Well, we do our best to, I do my best, and we do our best to learn and then put what we've learned in documents. So our trifolds have information that we've learned throughout this. This book is things that I've learned. But really, like if you read anything that I've written, you should always go back to the source documents and check it and make sure that I got it right. Because what if I got it wrong, right? And then you guys got to tell me, hey, Chris, you got this wrong. We need to change it. Let's talk about this. And that's actually why I included the source documents that I used for this booklet at the back. I included the original treaty text, and I made sure to include who the signatories were on all of the treaties that are relevant to Alberta. Although there are two more. There's 2 treaties, 4 and 9, that they're shared within British Columbia and Saskatchewan and Alberta. So those aren't in here. But always go back to the source documents. And when I produce a trifold or something like that with documentation on it, oftentimes I'll actually cite that right back to where I got the information, where it came from Statistics Canada or federal government website, Government of Canada website, whatever. But always be willing to take that extra step and go dig into that further. Because last thing we want to do is someone goes on the internet, and let's just, for example, they would never say this because this is an outright lie. That someone might say, hey, if Alberta comes independent, you're going to lose your mobility rights, you're going to lose your pension, and the U.S. is going to absorb you. You're going to become a Trumpian. Nobody would ever say that.
They wouldn't
but
say that.
If they did, we need to be able to go back to the source documents and review it. Read the Canada Pension Plan Act. Can you lose your pension plan if you live in a different nation? The answer is no. Can you lose your mobility rights as a Canadian? Unless you become incarcerated, the answer is no. Can you lose your Canadian citizenship? Justin Trudeau himself said, once a Canadian, always a Canadian, forever Canadian, which is why I agree with those forever Canadian lawn signs. The answer is no. So if you go back to the source documents, all of the sudden, everything becomes clear, and we can start calling out the BS when we see it and exposing the frauds pretending to advocate for us and only advocating for their own future.
My wife and I lived in Mexico for a decade and a half. CPP and OAS came in regular as clockwork. But the other thing that I've heard is that some so-called constitutional experts, lawyers, have said that in this particular instance, the government of Canada may find a way to take away the citizenship of people who decide that they want to be part of an independent Alberta. My question is this. I hope they try too, but my question is this. If they tried to do that, how are they going to sort out who voted for independence and who voted to stay in Canada? You know, I mean, maybe you said, I want to stay in Canada, and that's the way I voted, and maybe your wife said, no, I want to leave because I want independence. How do they determine which one loses their citizenship? It just can't happen. It's absolute fear-mongering and has no place in a reasonable debate.
You know what I've noticed? More times than not, our politicians and our governments, they use fear-mongering and gaslighting. They literally gaslight us. They make us believe that we're a problem and we need them to save us from ourselves, and then we vote accordingly. And it's starting to irk me a little bit how easily people have been fooled into believing that the government has their best interests at heart. They do not. And we got to start really paying attention and calling them out for it.
The Supreme Court of Canada has already ruled on whether you can lose your citizenship or not. In the case of, you got to remind me his name. Omar Khadr. he went and he fought with ISIS, and he actually fought against Canadian forces. The Canadian government jailed him and stripped him of his citizenship. He fought it, went to the Supreme Court of Canada. He got $10 million, plus the Supreme Court ruled that there is only one way you can lose your Canadian citizenship, period. And that is if you immigrated here and you lied on your application. That is the only way that you can lose your Canadian citizenship. You can go fight with ISIS if you want, and you still won't lose your Canadian citizenship.
Please don't do that.
What, go fight with ISIS?
Yeah.
They wouldn't want me anyways.
You got to take care of that shoulder. You know.
Actually, that's a great example of an area in which the Supreme Court actually changed law.
That's right.
Prior to 1982, there was it still exists, but there's an act called the 1942 Act, and that says that if you go abroad and you fight against Canada or against Canada's allies with the enemy, you can be stripped of your citizenship. That's the law that they used to strip Omar Kadar's citizenship. However, the Supreme Court overturned that law. And I want to remind you folks, you did not elect the judges in the Supreme Court. Very few of them come from Alberta and have Alberta's interests and values at heart. And they changed the law in that way. And this isn't the only example of this. This happens with a lot of different things. The 1982 Constitution, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, gave the Supreme Court the ability to interpret law and make new law without ever being elected or accountable to the laws they make.
What's happened is that in a democracy, in the kind of democracy we have, a constitutional monarchy, the Supreme Court of the land is supposed to be the Parliament. But what's happened with these changes is that the Supreme Court of Canada now can overrule Parliament.
Prior to 1982, the final decision on all laws sat with the Privy Council. The Privy Council was the ones that finally decided whether it met the criteria of the Constitution, the BNA Act, and whether it was enforceable. The Privy Council still exists, but it's now just an old boys club. And every politician in this country wants to get in there and get their $250,000 a year to do nothing and just sit on the Privy Council. The Privy Council has no power anymore. They are just a good old boys club that is prestigious to have their name on. But before 1982, they were the final say.
There's some women on that council too.
I know, but they're still good old boys.
Speaking of the Constitution, this is something I didn't know until I was in my mid-40s. And I'm only 47 this year? Yeah.
Yep, you're 11 years younger.
We didn't actually have input on our Constitution. Did you know that? The Canadian Constitution came from the British North America Act. Now, I don't know why I never put this together before a few years ago, but the BNA, the British North America Act, was actually an act of the English legislature, of the British Parliament. It wasn't like in 1867 a bunch of people got together and said, hey, we want to be by the people, for the people, elect people, self-govern, that kind of thing. No, that never happened. Some people, some elitists, some rewarded rulers went to England and they sat with the Crown's representatives, and the English Crown drafted the British North America Act and imposed that on the Dominion of Canada. And in 1982, Pierre Elliott Trudeau went to England and brought the BNA Act to Canada and used the text of the BNA, albeit a little bit of changes, added the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and imposed that on Canadians. It was never by the people, for the people. And here's the opportunity with Alberta self-determination for everybody. Do you think that it would benefit you or your family if you were able to attend constitutional conventions and decide what your government was going to look like, decide how you're going to be governed? Do you think it would benefit First Nations groups to participate in a constitutional convention and decide how their treaty rights would be reflected in the Alberta Constitution? This is the opportunity, for the first time in Canadian history, for the people to actually exercise their God-given right to self-determination and tell the people who wish to govern them how they may govern. This is a huge, huge deal. And I said it before, millions of people have died for this opportunity. And all we have to do is give a little bit of our time and talk to each other, and we could reach out and grab that opportunity by checking a box on a piece of paper. What an amazing time to be alive, and what bigger duty could we have to ourselves and Alberta than to educate ourselves on these matters and make the right choice.
You know, it's interesting. You say you're coming up 47.
I think.
All of my kids are older than you. Or, I don't understand what's going on here.
Do you know what that means, John?
No, what?
Did you forget?
I think so. Anyway, one of the things I'd like to say, for those of you who are Forever Canada, there is a way to save Canada. Right now, Canada is in a position where it's very difficult to save because the amount of destruction that's occurred financially in Canada over the past, well, let's take the past decade and a half, but we can keep going back even further than then, has been absolutely disastrous for the country. We have 9 provinces that are in a recession position. We have 7 of those 9 provinces who rely on the other 3, primarily Alberta, in order to survive. And I had a little story I used to tell in a couple of other talks. Let's say that you and your wife are, in your 50s or 60s, and your brother-in-law said, "My wife just left me. I lost my job. They're repossessing my house. Can I come and stay with you for a little while until I get back on my feet?" And you say, "Sure," because you love your family. So what do? You open your basement suite to your brother-in-law. He's going to come and stay for a week or 2 or a month or 2 to get his life back together. And then one day you get up and you go to the fridge to make breakfast and the bacon's gone and there's no eggs. There's no milk for cereal. Your brother-in-law has had a midnight snack. Then you go down and you look at your brother-in-law, he's sitting there, he's got a game console going and he's playing games on the internet. And you sit back and you realize it's 1995 and your brother-in-law moved in for a couple of weeks in 1987. So you say, well, wait a minute. What would you do with your brother-in-law? Tell me, what would you do with him? Come on, guys, what would you do? You'd kick him out. We have the same thing in Canada. We have maritime provinces that used to have an industrial base. We have Newfoundland and Labrador, which used to have a really good fishery. And by the way, Newfoundland and Labrador export 1.5 billion barrels of oil every year, and they don't have a carbon tax. And they also don't have a tanker ban. So we have these provinces, and Quebec gets 8.7% of their budget from us for their annual needs, which doesn't sound like much until you realize it's $13.5 billion. They also have a boatload of natural gas and all sorts of shale oil that they won't develop because if they do that, they lose their equalization. So the way we save Canada is we leave. We force them to do what you want your brother-in-law to do, which is to stand on their own 2 feet. And if you force them to do it, they'll do it. So we can save Canada if you want.
One of the things that I had mentioned in my talk was how the 1982 Constitution was actually not to our favor. And one of the reasons for that was because it did away with common law. The British Constitution is entirely common law. It's not, there is no written British Constitution. And we were under that British Constitution under the BNA Act. When Trudeau repatriated the Constitution, he put it all in written rules, which took away a lot of the rights that we had under the common law and totally eliminated them from our being able to use them. Then he brought in, lots of people think that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is one of the greatest documents. It's actually one of the worst documents that there is. It doesn't give us our rights and freedoms because those rights and freedoms are guaranteed us as humans, most of them. And then they go and they put in the subsection 1, which states that they can take them away if they deem that there's a reason for it. So those were some of the biggest changes that the 1982 Constitution did that took away our rights and freedoms rather than giving them to us.
Hi, Melva. Chris, my question is for you. You said during your speech, and I know you don't write your speeches, but try to remember, you said during your speech that they are trying to divide us. Could you elaborate on who is they? And then I have a follow-up question.
I can't name names. I can tell you that across the world, there are people that benefit from the division amongst the common folk. I can tell you that in the last few years, I've watched hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars be siphoned out of the middle class and onwards and upwards to elitists. It would be, in a nutshell, it's the people that find themselves in positions of authority and governance over us. It benefits them that we squabble and we fight because they can maintain control that way. And this has been done throughout history for thousands and thousands of years. There's other ways, of course. I mean, bread and circuses, right? They make sure we have our bread box and we have some entertainment and we forget the failings of the nation. Patriotism blinds people to the failings of the nation. It pulls on their emotional heartstrings and has them lash out at someone like me when I say we have an opportunity for self-determination to do something by the people, for the people, to make sure we have our rights and liberties guaranteed to us, makes them lash out and say that I should die because I'm a traitor to Canada. That's pretty emotional. What made them get that emotional? It's not the facts, right? So these are the, you know, the kind of the things on the sidelines that we have to think about. And when you dig into history a little bit and you see how it went for other people, it gives you a really good mirror to look at what's going on with us right now.
Thank you, Chris.
One of the things, before you do your follow-up questions, one of the things that governments do is they use fear. And when you divide people, you divide them on the basis of fear. Like the Forever Canada people will call you names and tell you you're a traitor because they fear what you're doing. It's going to impact their relationship with the country. So that fear is something that governments have used throughout history to maintain control of their people. And when I was a kid, it was those evil Russians you had to hide under your desk at school because there might be a nuclear attack. And a short while ago, it was, my goodness, we have a pandemic. Everybody's going to die. Turns out more people died from the vaccination than died from the pandemic. So it's fear. So what I would suggest as an antidote for that is courage. Courage doesn't mean you don't get afraid when people tell you there's things to fear. Courage means you truck on anyway. You do what needs to be done, you investigate what needs to be investigated, and you decide what's best for you and your family based on that investigation.
Thank you. So then this question I actually asked to AI, and I would love to share the answer with you because it was pretty enlightening for me. So I actually asked, with all the increasing restrictive government regulations, laws, and policies, and I specifically listed Bill C9. This is AI's answer, but I just ask us all to think about whether it rings true or not. What impacts do those have and what parallels to Canada based on countries? And I specifically named Iran, Venezuela, China, and the answer was that sorry, I just have to find it actually. It was really, okay, so more broadly, if someone evaluating the health of a democracy, political scientists often look beyond any single issue. Some indications that attract attention include whether governments can be voted out in free and fair elections. And I wonder if Albertans feel like the last federal election was free and fair, considering that it did not represent Alberta's overwhelmingly majority of choice. So then the second thing was whether courts can rule against the government and have those rulings respected. I think you have spoken to that today, and I think you have experience with that. Whether opposition parties can campaign freely, and whether citizens can criticize the government without the fear of imprisonment. Whether independent media organizations, including those critical of the government, can continue to operate. Whether governments increasingly centralized power or reduce institutional checks and balances. And I think that we see evidence of all of those today, which is very scary to me.
If we stop doing what we tend to do and we stop focusing on the individual issues, the problems, and instead we look at the outcome of everything that's happened, we get a much clearer picture about what's going on. First of all, I'll probably take about 5 minutes to do this part. So is there any pressing questions that you want to ask before I share this with you? Okay. Oh, there's one.
This is back a bit, but I was just wondering, how do the chiefs, the First Nations chiefs, get their power? Are they elected by the people?
Well, there are elected chiefs and hereditary chiefs, so it depends on which area they're in.
Yeah, okay.
So I just want to share something quickly. The last job I had before I bought the Wissosop Cafe is I was a superintendent for an oil company in South America, in Colombia. And during that time, this was 2017, 2018, just into 2019, I guess. I flew into Bogota, and then from Bogota, I flew into my field area. And in the latter part of my tour there, my field was the northern part of the country. So I would fly into a place called Barranca Bermeja, mostly. That's kind of in the middle of the Magdalena Valley. One day, on my 3-hour tour from the airport to my field office, we came upon a group of people walking on the side of the road. And it amazed me when I realized there was thousands of people. Like, this was a caravan of people as far as the eye could see. And they had their belongings with them. Some of them had, like, the hobo stick with the stuff tied on it, literally walking like that. Some of them in bare feet. Women, children, whatever, some men in suits. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Why are these people walking? Is this a marathon? And my assistant, my translator, said, no, these are Venezuelans. And I was like, Venezuelans? We're like 350 miles from Venezuela. He said, yeah, they're walking from Venezuela through Colombia. Some of them stay in Colombia. Some of them, most of them went into Ecuador because they're escaping their country. Thinking, that's weird. Like, a few years ago, Venezuela was world class. Tons of energy. 70% of their border is coastline. So they have all the access to the sea you could ever want. They can grow food 365 days a year. They have a democracy. Like, it was a fantastic place. And now I'm watching people walking. And as my time there went on, they got closer and closer to my office. Eventually, one morning, I went to get onto the rig road to go to my office in the field, and the jungle had been cleared back. And I said, what's happening? Are they building something? And he said, no, the Venezuelans have arrived. And so the next day, I came into work, and there was tents and tarps and a shanty town built. Then the next day, I pulled up to the road, and there was chairs on the side of the road with young girls in miniskirts. What do you think those young girls were doing? Now, you might ask yourself, how bad does a country have to get before that happens? How do you go from a robust economy, world-class everything to that? And why don't the people change it? And this question was answered after the U.S. administration took out Maduro earlier on. I watched an interview with the person from Venezuela, and they were cheering, like this was at a party because Maduro had been taken. And the reporter asked the question, you voted. Why did you guys keep voting for this? Why didn't you just vote for a new government? And notwithstanding that Maduro had just not acknowledged an election in which he lost, they said, the government gave us food boxes. They gave us bread. And a lot of the times the food in those boxes was moldy or bad or whatever. But they told us if we didn't keep voting for them, the next government might not give them a bread box. Then I start thinking, wow, what are we hearing in our media? What are we hearing from the people who advocate for the status quo? Oh, if we don't support the status quo, we might be annexed by the US. If we don't support the status quo, you might not get your old age security. If we don't support the status quo, you might lose your CPP. You might lose your bread box. And that's been used as a mechanism of control in Canada since before Confederation. Think about that. And we're still doing it. So I've started saying this. If Alberta has the courage to change, if we have the courage to do the things that we need to do to make the changes that increase our freedom and prosperity and remove the shackles that we're under right now, we will get those things. If we have the courage to know that we can fill our own bread boxes and we don't need the government to do it, we can experience great things. But if we don't have that courage, if we do what they did in Venezuela, and we focus on the moldy bread box instead of the opportunity that's ahead of us, we won't win. So take that with you when you leave here tonight.
You mean kind of like the $100 from the provincial government?
I just want to answer Melva's question too, if I may. I agree. The power is the they, and I have a caution. When Mark Carney came in as Prime Minister, very shortly after, within our first year with him, he stated very clearly the following 2 points. We in Canada will follow the policies of the World Economic Forum. That's on video. He also stated that we in Canada will be part of the New World Order. I think when we understand that the they that's in power right now is upsetting to most of us, imagine what it's going to be like to be under a power that's not even part of Canada and is absolutely not reachable by the people. And the other thing I wanted to say, if I can remember, oh yes, you mentioned, Sheane, I believe it was you, the Privy Council, did you not? Yes. The Privy Council has just gotten a new leader. Mark Carney hired a lady there. Both of these new hirees, by the way, that I'm going to mention are ladies, who has, I got to remember which is which. One has been in power, I hate to say it that way, but in a leadership position in the WEF, and one has spoken 3 times at the WEF as a guest. One lady is in charge of our Privy Council now. He fired the last one, or released them, and got a WEF member there. You are right. That council is the only one who can control our Prime Minister. The other person who can impact our Prime Minister and refuse to sign a bill is our Governor General. That's the other lady I'm talking about. She too is a WEF. So in my mind, a vote for, what do they call it? A vote for Canada, staying in Canada, is a vote for the WEF and the One World Order, because we are going to be, in fact, we already are now under their policy. And I, for one, want no part of that.
Well, it is getting fairly late. Is there... Oh, there is. I feel like Shane's turning into a pumpkin.
Last question.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Brian here. I just got a quick question there on votes that are important. Now, there's about 200 Hutterite colonies in Alberta. What kind of inroads are you talking to them at all? I mean, have you got any information on that one?
Hutterites are Albertans, and there is some history there. When the Hutterites arrived in the United States, they made a deal with the government, and the deal was, we aren't going to fight in your wars, but leave us alone. That's it. That's it. They're not going to participate in elections. They're not going to do any of that stuff, but they'll contribute to society, not fight, do their thing, leave us alone. That was the deal. And they've carried that into Canada. So when we have these conversations, and we do frequently, they always remind us of this deal they made. So now I'm conveying, yes, maybe you guys made that deal, but what's happening now? The Hutterites, their colonies, they're all churches. It is the church of whatever Hutterite colony. And they go to church every day. Every day at 6 p.m. after dinner, they go to church. They're very religious people. They're people of faith. Our government just passed a law that would fine or jail them from practicing their religion. So the government is no longer staying out of their lives. It's no longer a live and let live thing. And so these conversations come up, and it's resulted in, even before these bills passed, it's resulted in a lot of Hutterites signed the petition to compel the referendum. They did, and that's not something they do. So they're actually, they're becoming civically engaged now because of the wolf on the doorstep. And we have the conversations frequently. It's a bit of an uphill battle, but they are coming around, and even to the point where some of them are risking discipline to participate, to make sure that their future, to practice their faith specifically, remains intact in Alberta.
Hi, my name's Lori. I'm hoping that you're doing the same thing in Calgary and Edmonton as you're doing in the rural areas. Are you making any inroads with the city people?
We have been doing some stuff in the cities, but starting the beginning of August, we are concentrating almost exclusively on the cities. And we have got pop-up kits that are going out to all of our volunteers in the cities. They will be starting to have pop-ups almost every day around the cities. And then we will be going and having on a regular basis these type of town halls all over Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, and Lethbridge. As of August 1st, that is almost our exclusive function.
Awesome.
I'm going to tell you something really interesting here. Our governing party, the UCP, I think they have roughly $12 million in the bank, something like that. $12 million. One of the initiatives with Let's Talk Alberta is I want to make sure that every Albertan home has a trifold pamphlet that has information on this topic. I want everybody to know that the conversation is important. Well, do you know what it would cost to get a mail out in every mailbox in Alberta? $12 million. $12 million. The same amount of money that our governing party has in the bank. Now, that money from the governing party that's in the bank came from us. Every time we mobilized to do something, bought memberships to get rid of a premier, elect another one, vote in the leadership race, whatever, we put that money in the bank. And if we want to have an outcome for sovereignty, an outcome for Alberta self-determination, we're going to have to put more money in the bank. Our next, where did I do that? Grand Prairie. So we're going to be in Grand Prairie next week or the week after? Soon. We're going to be in Grand Prairie soon. 3 weeks. So today, I did the Canada Post precision targeter mail thing to see what it would cost us to send a trifold flyer to every address in Grand Prairie from city center, 20-minute drive. Guess how much it costs? $8,000. $8,000. Now, granted, that's a lot of mail out, but these are the numbers that we're dealing with. That's why we have the yellow buckets. That's why we have the donate button at letstalkalberta.com. That's why we've set up auto deposit at letstalkalberta@gmail.com. Because in order to do this, to reach people with this information, it is not free. And we'll reach a lot by driving around in the bus and having conversations with people. But to be really effective, we need a lot of money.
And it's August 12th, by the way, that will be
August 12th.
Grand Prairie. But just to give you an idea of what each one of those trifold costs 13 cents to print, and then when we want to mail it out, it's 17 cents on each and every copy. So that adds up when you get 100,000 of them and the links. So this truly is the last question.
More of a comment. James Gornswood. I've known Chris for a few years now. He knows me. We're doing a Big Valley Jamboree event here in Camrose. And we've got Alberta Flags and myself are going to be driving through the parade. And Alberta Flags asked me if anybody is available to help volunteer, because we want to hand out little mini flags on the tour, like going into Big Valley. So it's like the Big Valley Jamboree, pretty big event here. Anybody wants to help volunteer at all for that? Come and see me. It's on Thursday. Next week, 30th.
on that topic, we are looking for volunteers for the pop-ups to help with the pop-ups as well. And just on the note of the Patty, you're going to have to help me with this because we looked into actually having a booth at the Big Valley Jamboree. It would cost us a blooming fortune. Number one.
Just tell me, Patty. We'll say it.
Yeah.
$1,000 for 3 days, and that allowed you 2 volunteers. If you wanted to have like 3 or 4 that could trade in and out, each of those other volunteers were another $100. So if you had 4 people, that was over $1,200 plus GST. And then you're allowed 1 parking space.
Yeah, it just wasn't feasible. We did look at actually being there, but it just became unfeasible to do. But any other events that you hear about coming up, gun shows, anything like that, let us know. We're setting up. We set up at the Ponoka Stampede there. We're setting up at some of the other functions going around. We've been sponsoring parade floats. We've been handing out flags like crazy, the small
at
flags.
At the Stettler Fair, our friend is setting up across from the entry gate because her daughter's got a yard right there, so she's going to have one of our big tents right there. So she gets the coming and the going.
I can't believe I forgot to do this because I'm a capitalist. There's a lot of places that we can't get to. You can go. I encourage you, go to Big Valley Jamboree, enjoy the music, enjoy the completely ridiculously overpriced food truck food because they have to give 30% to the fair. Have a good time. When you do it, wear a Let's Talk Alberta shirt, please. It's great advertisement, and it will get people talking. Some might sneer at you. Some will say they like your shirt. I guarantee you, more will say, "Hey, that shirt's awesome. Where do I get it?" than will sneer at you. Also, I mentioned I'm a capitalist. My lovely girlfriend Jessica, she's already packed everything up, but we have a whole bunch of Alberta stuff, a whole bunch of merchandise, T-shirts, tank tops, onesies for babies, like dog costumes, you name it, that have like Free Alberta or Republic of Alberta on it. Wear it. Please buy my overpriced stuff, help me out, and become a conversation piece. It actually is working that people are wearing these things wherever they go, because we're walking billboards and we're a walking invitation for a conversation. So it's not just about putting some money in our pocket so we can feed our children and pay for school stuff. It's also about wearing your opinion and standing firm in your beliefs and willing to have the conversation. When you wear stuff like that, that's the vibe you're giving off. And I forgot to mention Brad and Bahara back there. They've got some awesome stuff as well that they've packed up. But they're also entrepreneurs and capitalists, so I'm sure they would unpack it if you need something.
And we have a lot of speakers on the tour with us that have written some really excellent books, and they have copies of all those books back there for you to take. And even some people that I don't agree with. Actually, I agree on about 98% with Ben Trudeau, but this is the last little bit. But I recommend to everybody that you grab a copy of his book. It is very good read. Very good read.
And seeing how that was the last question, I'll wrap this up. If we missed you or you have a question you want to talk to us privately or individually, please feel free to approach us after. Happy to do it. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for listening. And thank you for talking to us. Thank you for your questions and your statements and your concerns. I'm absolutely humbled to say that I get to be at a place like this and interact with folks like you. It means a lot to me and the other speakers and to Let's Talk Alberta that you take time out of your busy and full lives to come and spend it with us, talking about the future of the place that you live. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And don't forget that tomorrow we'll be in High River as well, streaming from there. Hey, guys? Yes.
Test, test.
This will work on mine? But not on the speakers? Can you guys hear me? Oh, yeah, they can hear me. I see the little green lights. Well, there you go, folks. Another Let's Talk Alberta event in Camrose. This was absolutely fantastic. It was great to see the place filled. It's awesome that we have some brave business owners that host us in these awesome venues. And it's really encouraging to see people coming out and engaging with this conversation. I hope that you consider coming out to one of the next ones. Tomorrow, I guess we're in High River. We're also going to be in Nanton shortly, Cowley, somewhere else. Killam coming up soon, Grand Prairie in 3 weeks, as Shane said. And after that, I mean, we're going to be hitting the cities running. We have Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, Red Deer, the circuit basically every day until October. And we're going to need some help with that. So if this is something that you would like to volunteer for, financially support, whatever, get a hold of us at letstalkalberta.com or letstalkalberta@gmail.com and let us know what you can do, what you want to do. And we're happy to have you be part of the team. That's what this is. It is a team effort. And it is, in my opinion, the most important team effort that Albertans will make in our lifetimes. We have a real opportunity here to change the world in ways that none of us ever dreamed possible. And all we have to do is just work like a team. So let's do it. See you on the next one. And yes, there will be a meow, so just hang tight for that.